I'm Marlene Conrad, 68 years old, and I still live in the house where I raised my daughter. The same house my husband Jack and I bought in 1984. It's got a white porch swing he built himself and flower beds I've tended for decades on a Thursday afternoon in June. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the driveway, waiting for my daughter Emily to arrive. With the kids, she'd promised they'd be here by 2:45. I was already wiping my hands on my apron, checking the turkey in the oven and setting out the lemonade glasses. I didn't know it yet, but this would be the last weekend I ever opened that front door as their grandma on Meadowlark Drive. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make a decision your family didn't see coming. My name's Marlene, and I was a nurse for over 30 years, mostly in the city's emergency room. I got used to long shifts and sore feet and learning how to do the hard things without blinking. Jack used to say I could stitch up a broken leg and make it home in time for Sunday dinner with a smile. We didn't have much back then, but we had our routines. We saved where we could. I packed his lunch. He fixed the car. We were a team. We bought our house in Belmont when Emily was 4. I still remember the day she picked the smallest bedroom and called it hers. Painted the walls lavender with stickers of stars. She was a sharp little thing, always a step ahead of her teachers, and by the time she was 16, she'd outgrown everything. Small that house included, Jack passed too early 5 years ago. A heart attack in the garden. He'd just finished laying mulch around the roses. I still look at that flower bed every morning. Emily visits with the kids about once a month. Silas is 14 now, buried in his phone most days, and Fallon just turned 11. Bright as a bell and still full of questions. I try to keep the fridge stocked when they come over, Emily always. Comments, if I forget something? Milk eggs, fruit for the kids, turkey for the weekend? She says she's too busy to cook, and I believe her. She works full-time at an insurance office. Always sounds stressed, always juggling something that day. When they arrived, Emily stepped inside, carrying grocery bags, and announced the air conditioner was useless again. Didn't ask how I was or say hello, just walked right in. Silas mumbled hi and disappeared with his phone. Fallon gave me a big hug and smelled like bubble gum and the shampoo kids use with cartoons on the bottle. I tried to keep the afternoon cheerful. Set the table, made sure the turkey wasn't too oily. Emily doesn't like when I add too much fat. Says Silas is putting on weight, and I'm not helping. She's always quick to point out what I forget or how I do things wrong. Sometimes it feels like I'm a task. She's managing more than a mother. She's visiting after dinner. She asked to talk alone. We sat in the kitchen while the kids went off to their rooms. And she said it just like that, Mom. We need to start thinking about the future. You can't keep up with this place. You're forgetting things. You're not safe here alone. I told her I was fine. I've never once left the stove on. She waved her hand. Said that wasn't the point. Said I should consider assisted living somewhere with nurses on staff. Somewhere safe. Somewhere smaller. It was the word she used that stayed with me, a burden. She said it like a fact, not an insult. Not cruel, just like something already decided. I didn't say much that night. We played board games with the kids, watched a movie in the den. I smiled when I needed to smile when they said goodbye. Smiled as I washed the dishes and sat alone in the kitchen while the clock ticked past midnight. But inside, that word kept echoing around me like a hallway without walls. A burden. I stared at the swing jack built out front and thought about all the years I spent keeping this house a home. How I raised a daughter who now couldn't see me as anything but a future problem to be solved. The next morning, when she brewed coffee and smiled like nothing had been said, I realized something had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't brush it aside. I decided to listen to the silence that came after her words. And that's when everything quietly began to change. On Sunday afternoon, I sat at the edge of my new bed holding the phone in my lap. I had just finished downloading photos from our walk in the park, and the light from the window had shifted across the rug. The apartment was quiet. I could hear a dog barking in the distance and the faint hum of the elevator down the hall. I knew I needed to call Emily back. She'd left 3 voicemails. I could feel the tension in her voice before I even pressed play. The first message was clipped urgent. She'd just found out the house on Meadowlark Drive had been sold. Her friend from church had driven by and noticed the moving truck, then saw a young family with a child walking up the front steps. The second message came an hour later, her voice more shaken. She said she'd driven out there, walked right up to the front door, and the woman who answered told her they'd closed the week before. The third voicemail, she was nearly shouting, "Mom, where are you? I'm calling the police if you don't answer." I pressed redial. She picked up before the first ring finished. "Mom," she said, breathless, "is it true? Did you really sell the house?" I said yes. "You sold it, just like that, without telling me?" Her voice was high, almost disbelieving. "What are you talking about? You sold it." "I moved into an apartment in the city," I said. "It's small but comfortable. It's quiet in the mornings. There's a park just across the street. I've started classes." "Classes," she repeated as if the word didn't register. "Photography. I signed up for a course, 2 evenings a week. We took pictures yesterday out at the lake." There was a long pause on the line. I could hear her breathing. "So this is about what I said, about the nursing home." Her voice had dropped lower, uncertain now. I waited. Then I said, "Not just that. But yes, it was the last push I needed." "I didn't mean you had to go right away," she said louder now. "I was just trying to have a conversation about the future. I didn't mean this. I know I said. You wanted me to think about the future, and I did. I thought about it all night. I thought about what your father would have said. I thought about what I want for what's left of my life. And I made some choices." "You made choices," she asked, "and you didn't think I deserved to be part of that conversation. I'm your daughter. We're family. This was our home. It was mine," I said quietly. "But the memories, we still have those. They don't live in the drywall or the floorboards." "Don't bring Dad into this," she snapped. "He would never have sold the house, not without talking to me first." I let that pass. "You don't even know how to live in an apartment," she said next. "There are neighbors behind the walls. You have no garden. You've never done this before." "I can learn," I said. She didn't answer. "You're mad," I said, "because I didn't do what you expected." "No," she said. "I'm mad because it feels like you're punishing me. You knew I always thought I'd move into that house one day, after the kids got older. That was the plan. I didn't know there'd been a plan. You said I was a burden," I said. "You wanted to plan ahead. So I did. I took care of myself so you wouldn't have to." "This is different," she said. "It's not about the money." But her voice shook a little. "The money is in the bank," I said. "Most of it. I used what I needed for the apartment and the class fees. The rest will go to you and the kids someday." "That's not what I meant," she said. Then more quietly, "It just feels like you cut me out." "I didn't cut you out. I just didn't ask permission." She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she said, "I want to come see it." "Of course," I said. "I want to make sure you're okay." "I'm okay. Come next Saturday. I'll cook something. You can bring the kids if you want." 2:00, she said. "And next time, tell me when something like this is happening." I thought something had happened to you. I promised I would try. After the call ended, I opened the photos from the park. The one I kept coming back to was a shot I'd taken of the lake framed by trees, the water catching the gold of the setting sun. The composition was better than I expected. I made a note to print it later, maybe frame it. That night, I slept with the camera next to me on the nightstand. I liked knowing it was there. The next morning, Vinny called. I could hear her already fussing on the other end of the line. "You sold the house and didn't tell me I had to hear it from Clara on Pine Street." "It happened quickly," I said. "You didn't answer your door last week. I thought you were mad at me for what I said. I followed your advice." There was a pause. "You did?" "I sold the house. Found a place downtown. I'm taking photography classes." "Well, I'll be. You actually did it." She made me promise to have her over next Sunday after Emily's visit. I told her I'd bake a blueberry pie. On Saturday morning, I got up early. I wanted everything in place. The roast went into the oven at 9. I cleaned the counters, wiped down the table, and opened the curtains wide. I printed 6 of my favorite photos and pinned them to the wall above the couch. The apartment still smelled faintly of fresh paint, but I liked it. I put on my dark blue dress, the one Jack used to say made me look like a first lady. I curled the ends of my hair and dusted powder across my cheeks. At 2:00, the doorbell rang. "It's us." Emily's voice called through the intercom. "Which button is yours?" "Third one on the right," I said. "4th floor, apartment 412. I heard the click of the elevator doors, then footsteps. When I opened the door, Fallon rushed in, first arms wide. "You got a new house?" "An apartment," I corrected gently. "Come in." Silas trailed behind headphones still around his neck, eyes scanning the walls. Emily was last. She looked around, lips pressed together. "Interesting place," she said. "I like it," I said. She didn't answer. She walked into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, ran her fingers along the edge of the sink. "It's pretty cramped," she said. "And noisy, I bet." I smiled. "I like the sound of the street. Makes the place feel alive." Fallon had stopped in front of the photos. "You took these?" she asked. I did. Want to learn how Silas looked up from his phone. "What kind of camera is it?" I told him the model. He blinked. "Really? That's like a real camera." "I'm learning," I said. Emily said nothing. We sat down to eat, and the tension began to ease. Fallon asked for seconds on the pie. Silas complimented the roast. Emily nodded once and said the potatoes were cooked just right. After the table was cleared, the kids wandered out to the balcony. Emily stayed behind. She ran her fingers along the rim of her teacup. "I was going to move into the house," she said quietly. "In a few years. Me and the kids, that was always the plan." I looked at her. She didn't raise her eyes. I thought it was obvious. She added, "You never asked." Neither did she. I waited. "I thought we'd live together," she said. "You'd help with the kids. I'd help with the house. It would work." "You told me I was a burden," I said. "Not now," she snapped. "Not yet. I meant in 10 or 15 years. I sat back. "You never told me that was your plan?" I said. She looked down. "I didn't want to pressure you," she said, "but I thought you'd understand." "I understand now," I said, "but I don't think I would have agreed." She didn't speak. We sat there, the last bits of light slipping across the table. Fallon called from the balcony. "Grandma, you promised to show me the camera." I stood up slowly and walked toward the hallway. "I'll get it," I said. "We'll go out to the park." Behind me, Emily didn't move. Her hands stayed wrapped around the teacup. Fallon leaned over the camera with both hands, listening closely as I showed her the shutter button and where to adjust the focus. We stood on the walking path just outside my building, leaves rustling lightly above us in the late afternoon breeze. Silas lingered a few steps back, arms folded, but I noticed his eyes drifting toward the screen every time Fallon snapped a picture. Emily had stayed behind in the apartment. She said she had a headache. We spent the next hour near the park entrance, taking turns with the camera pointing out squirrels on the benches, pigeons in the trees. Fallon liked to frame the flower beds. Silas eventually asked about lighting and exposure, and I showed him how to check the histogram. For a while, it felt easy, the way time stretches when you're doing something that doesn't ask for anything in return. Back inside, they scrolled through the photos while I sliced the rest of the apple pie. Emily stood near the counter holding her coffee, quiet but watchful. When it was time for them to go, Fallon hugged me tightly. Silas gave me a quick nod and said thanks for the lesson. Emily followed them out with a few words, no warmth in her tone but no anger either. Just tiredness. That night, I washed the pie dish and set it back in the cupboard. Then I sat in the living room and looked at the walls where my photos were hanging. The apartment didn't feel temporary anymore. The air was different. Still. My thoughts were slow and heavy. I knew Emily hadn't told me everything. I didn't know what exactly, but something about the way she looked at the camera at the apartment at me, I could feel it, though she hadn't said it. I spent the next few days sorting through what was left at the old house. The closing was coming up fast, and I wanted to be sure nothing was left behind that mattered. I'd already moved most of the essentials into the apartment, but the attic still needed attention. On Thursday morning, I went back one last time. It was quiet when I unlocked the door. My voice echoed faintly as I walked through the front hall. The garden had been trimmed by the buyer's landscaper, and the air smelled like cut grass and mulch. Upstairs, the bedrooms were empty. The walls still held faint outlines of old picture frames. In the attic, I opened box after box, old holiday decorations, suitcases that hadn't traveled in decades, Silas's baby clothes drawings Fallon had made in preschool. I set a few things aside to give to Emily. The rest, I planned to donate or discard. There was a chest tucked beneath a folded tarp near the back wall. Jack's chest. I'd brought it up here after he passed unopened, thinking I'd go through it someday. That day had come. Inside were the things I remembered: his old shirts, the scent of his aftershave still clinging faintly to the fabric. In the bottom drawer, tucked beneath some papers, I found an envelope with my name written across the front in Jack's handwriting. I sat down on the attic floor and opened it. His words were careful, meant for a moment like this. He told me to live fully, not to lose myself in sacrifice. He reminded me of how much I loved taking pictures. Told me not to let our daughter dictate what my life should be. He said he hoped I would remember who I was before everything became about holding everyone else together. I folded the letter back into the envelope and placed it in the canvas bag I kept for important papers. I sat there a long while, listening to the wood creak in the ceiling beams, letting the quiet settle around me. Then I began to pack what I needed, sort what I didn't, and load it into the car. That evening, I spoke to Emily briefly on the phone. I told her I'd be busy the next few days finishing up the move and finalizing the sale. She said she'd call over the weekend. Her voice was distant. 2 days later, Lane called. A family had made an offer higher than asking. A couple with a school-age child. They'd walked through the place and said it felt like home. They wanted to move quickly. I said yes. The next week, moved fast. Boxes, signatures, movers. On Thursday, I signed the final documents, handed over the keys, and stepped outside one last time. The new owners were waiting in the driveway. Their little boy ran up the front path and asked if there were any ghosts in the house. I smiled and told him only good memories. That evening, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat on the balcony. The sun had already dipped low. The trees in the park were catching the last bit of light. In the distance, I could hear a group of children laughing near the swings. Across the street, someone played piano through an open window. I looked around the apartment. My camera sat on the side table, battery charging. My books were on the shelf. My framed photos hung just the way I liked them. On Sunday, our photo class met again. Quentin organized another walk, this time by the river. We spent the morning adjusting our lenses, learning about shadows and movement. That afternoon, we stopped at a cafe. I ordered a sandwich and sat beside Quentin as he showed me a few editing tools on his tablet. When I got home, there were 3 missed calls, all from Emily. I listened to the voicemails. She'd found out the house had sold. Her voice was tight, urgent. She'd spoken to someone on the block who mentioned the new family moving in. She'd gone by and seen the sign taken down. Her messages got shorter. She said she was calling the police if I didn't answer. I sat with the phone in my lap, heart steady, hands quiet. I knew I had to call her back. I reached for the kitchen chair, sat down, and pressed redial. Emily answered on the second ring. Her voice was tight, almost hoarse, like she'd been holding it in too long. "I thought something had happened to you," she said. "You can't just disappear like that. You didn't even tell me you were selling." I had to hear it from strangers. I stayed quiet a moment. Then I said, "I didn't disappear. I moved. I made a change." There was a pause on her end. I heard the shuffle of keys, the beep of a car door unlocking. "I need to come over," she said. "Now. I need to talk to you in person." It was just past 4. I told her she could come. I'd put on the kettle. She arrived 30 minutes later, walking fast across the hallway like she didn't want time to think twice about it. She came in and stood in the center of the room, scanning the walls, the furniture, the light. Then she turned to me. "Did you sell it because of what I said about the home?" "I sold it because I knew I needed a different life," I said. "And yes, your words pushed that along." She shook her head. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." I nodded. "But you did." She didn't sit. She stood by the kitchen counter, arms folded, staring at a spot on the floor. I waited. "There's something I need to tell you," she said finally. "And I should have told you a long time ago." I didn't know how. I stayed still. She exhaled long and heavy. "I've been in debt. For a while. Credit cards mostly. Some loans. The house was always the plan because I thought maybe one day I'd move in with you. Maybe after the kids left home. Maybe sooner if I needed to." I thought that was understood. "It wasn't," I said. "I told myself it was temporary." She went on. "Just a rough patch." But then it kept piling up, and I stopped opening the envelopes. I thought if I could just hold on long enough, the house would be there. I could sell my place. Move in. Cut back. Reset. Her voice cracked on the last word. "I didn't want to ask you for help outright," she said. "I didn't want to seem like I was using you. But I figured you'd offer, that you'd see how hard things were, that you'd hand me a key, or at least let me stay a while." I walked to the counter and poured the hot water over the tea bag, let it steep. The scent of chamomile filled the room. She sank into the chair by the window. "When you moved out, when you sold it," I panicked, she said, because I realized I'd counted on something that was never mine to begin with. I set the cup in front of her. She didn't touch it. "I went to the house the day after you told me," she said quietly. I stood on the porch. The family that bought it had balloons tied to the mailbox. A little girl ran out the door in her socks. It felt like someone else had stepped into the story I thought was supposed to be mine. I pulled out the chair across from her. "I didn't know any of this," I said. "I didn't want you to," she said. "It felt selfish. But I was desperate. I figured if you stayed there long enough, eventually I'd find my way back in. And now—" She looked around the room again, this time with softer eyes. "You've made a life here." I nodded. "I'm still learning it. But yes. I don't want to be someone who resents that," she said. "But part of me does. Not because you left, but because I had assumed for so long that you'd be the safety net. And now, I'm seeing you don't owe me that. Neither of us spoke for a while. The air settled. Outside, the streetlights had begun to flicker on. I can help, I said. Not with everything. But if you need someone to go with you to the bank or help make a plan, I'll figure it out, she said. It's my mess. You don't have to do it alone, I said. She picked up the tea and held it between both hands, eyes fixed on the steam rising from the cup. When Dad died, you kept everything running, she said. You never asked for help. You just kept going. I think I thought you were unshakable. I was shaken, I said. Every day. I just didn't show it. She looked at me, then really looked. I'm sorry, she said, for assuming you'd always wait for me, for acting like the house belonged to me, for not seeing you as a whole person. I nodded once. I'm sorry for not telling you I'd sold it, I said. I should have said it sooner. She nodded too. We didn't hug, but something loosened in the quiet. She stayed another half hour. We looked through my latest photos, talked a little about Silas and Fallon, about how school was going for them. Before she left, she asked if we could try again. Come visit next week. Maybe bring the kids. Maybe cook something together. I told her I'd like that. After she left, I stood at the window watching her car pull away. The lights disappeared down the road. The apartment behind me was still. I walked over to the desk, picked up the envelope with Jack's letter, and read it again. When I folded it closed, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small note scribbled on the bottom of the page. You've carried enough, it said. Don't wait to put it down. The next photo walk was scheduled for Saturday morning. Quentin had sent out the email a few days earlier with a map of the route and a note about overcast skies being ideal for portraits. I left early, brought a light jacket in case the wind picked up, and packed an extra lens I hadn't used in years. When I got to the meeting spot just past the old train depot near the bike trail, there were already 7 people gathered in a loose, half-circle, cameras hanging from their shoulders. Quentin waved when he saw me. You brought the 75mm, he said, nodding toward my bag. Perfect light for it today. We started walking around 8. There was a low hum to the group quiet greetings, shutter clicks, the occasional laugh when someone accidentally caught a dog mid-sneeze. I stayed near the back, taking my time. The trees were starting to yellow near the tops. Leaves scattered across the gravel path like someone had laid them down on purpose. Around mid-morning, we reached the bridge. Quentin stopped the group, pointed out the way the water caught the underside of the structure, how the shadows moved depending on where you stood. I stepped off to the side, framed a shot, and saw a man leaning against the railing a few yards ahead watching us. Older, with a camera strap across his chest and a notebook in hand. After a minute, he walked over. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said. I was passing through, saw the group. You all from around here? I nodded. Mostly. Some folks come in from the next town over. He smiled, glanced toward the others. I'm Warren. I write for the Community Journal. We're doing a piece on local clubs trying to get more folks involved in creative stuff. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Quentin had stepped over by then. He introduced himself, explained the group's purpose. Warren jotted a few notes, asked if he could snap some pictures. Then he turned to me. How long have you been shooting? He asked. Since I was 20, I said. Picked it back up after retirement. What draws you to it? He asked. I thought for a second. You look at things longer when you're behind a lens. You notice more. He nodded like he understood. Mind if I include a short quote from you in the piece? That's fine, I said. I didn't think much of it after that. We finished the walk, reviewed our photos back at the center, and said our goodbyes. That night, I uploaded my shots to the shared drive. One of them, a portrait of an older man reading the paper by a fountain, caught Quentin's attention. He emailed me directly, said he wanted to feature it on the group's homepage. A week later, the journal article came out. Just a short spread, 2 columns with a photo of the group standing near the bridge. But there I was, center frame, mid-laugh, holding the camera up to my eye. Underneath a short caption, Marlene Conrad, retired ER nurse, finds joy in seeing the world through a different lens. Fallon saw it first. Emily had picked up a few copies of the paper from the library, and Fallon had brought one to school for a class project. The next time they visited, Fallon brought it with her, folded neatly, and pointed to the photo with a proud smile. "You're famous," she said. Emily looked at it a long time. Then she turned to me. "You didn't tell me." "It didn't seem important," I said. "It was just a short thing." "It's more than that," she said. "You've really built something." She walked around the apartment again, this time not with suspicion, but with curiosity. She paused at the bulletin board where I kept workshop flyers and prints from recent shoots. She thumbed through the album on the coffee table, shots from the park, the downtown farmers market, a street musician I'd captured in profile. "I had no idea you'd done this much," she said. "I've had time," I said. That evening, I received an email from the local community center. They were hosting an arts event in 2 months. Photographers, sculptors, painters, all invited to exhibit. One of Quentin's contacts had submitted my name. They asked if I'd like to show a few pieces. I sat with the email a long time. I hadn't framed anything before. Most of my work stayed digital, shared online, or printed for friends. But this was different. This was putting it on a wall for strangers to see. I called Lane the next morning, asked if she still had the number for the framer she'd used when she moved into her place. She did. I made an appointment that same day. The studio smelled like sawdust and varnish. I brought 6 prints. The woman behind the counter looked through them, careful, one corner at a time. "These are lovely," she said, very human. "You have a good eye." I picked simple frames, matte, black, clean lines, nothing ornate. I wanted the photos to speak on their own. The next few weeks passed quickly. I prepared labels, filled out forms, helped set up the exhibit. Quentin offered to hang my pieces himself. On opening night, the hall buzzed with quiet conversation and soft piano music drifting in from the front room. My display was near the east wall, 5 photos lined up in a row, one spotlight above each. Emily came. So did Fallon and Silas. Fallon walked the entire hall, pointing at things, asking questions. Silas stayed close to the snack table, but I caught him looking at my display more than once. Emily stood in front of my photos and didn't say anything for a long time. Then she turned to me and said, "I didn't know you had all this in you." I nodded. "I didn't either," I said. I was standing by the east wall of the exhibit watching Fallon explain the lighting in one of my portraits to a woman I didn't know when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was light familiar. I turned around. It was Garrett. He hadn't changed much. A little more gray at the temples, glasses instead of contacts. But the same posture, same quiet way of standing, like he was always trying not to take up space. "I wasn't sure it was you," he said. But then I saw the nameplate. "You go by Conrad, now I do," I said. "It's my middle name. I went back to it after Jack passed." He nodded, glanced around at the photos. "This is yours." I nodded. "They're beautiful," he said. "Really, I didn't know you were doing this." "I didn't either," I said. There was a pause. People moved around us, soft voices, the sound of a cello warming up from the next room, laughter from near the refreshment table. Garrett looked down at the floor, then back up at me. "I wouldn't have come," he said, but Fallon saw the photo in the paper. "Said she recognized your name. She asked if I knew you. And you said—" I told her we hadn't spoken in a long time. I waited. "She asked if you were the one who used to make cinnamon toast at church events," he said. I said yes. There was another pause. She said you were always the kindest person in the room, he added. I folded my hands in front of me. That was a long time ago. He nodded again. I didn't come to stir anything up, he said. I just wanted to see you, in your element. I glanced at the photos on the wall. One showed a man walking through fog, another a woman braiding a child's hair on a front porch. I started taking pictures after I moved, I said. Something about seeing things through a frame? It made the quiet feel fuller. He looked at the portrait of the woman and child. I didn't know how to stay in touch, he said. After Jack, I figured I should keep some distance, out of respect. I didn't want to cross a line. There wasn't a line, I said. There was silence. He looked at me, his expression unsure. I didn't think I had the right to reach out, he said. You could have, I said. He shifted, adjusting his weight from one foot to the other. I wanted to, he said, more times than I can count. He pulled something from his coat pocket. A small envelope. Plain. He held it out. I wrote you this years ago. Never mailed it. I kept it in my desk drawer. I didn't take it right away. I looked at it, then at him. It's not long, he said. Just thoughts I had about the way things ended. I took the envelope and slipped it into my purse. Thank you, I said. He looked down again, then back up. I'm glad you're doing well, he said. Really, you seem at home. I am, I said. Fallon ran up just then, pulling Silas behind her. Grandma, they're about to start the slideshow, she said. They're showing your pictures first. Silas waved at Garrett, then at me. Emily followed a few steps behind, holding 3 little cups of lemon punch. Fallon turned to Garrett. Do you know? Grandma Garrett smiled. We met a long time ago. Fallon looked between us. You should come sit with us. He hesitated. Emily raised an eyebrow. There was a long second. Then Garrett said, I'd like that. We walked to the chairs together. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. The first image came up, a black and white photo of a boy fishing by the dock. The next was the woman braiding hair. Then the foggy bridge. Fallon leaned against me. Emily smiled quietly. Garrett sat one seat over, hands folded, watching the screen like it was telling a story he'd forgotten he needed to hear. Later that night, after the exhibit closed and the last of the guests left, I opened the envelope. It was short, just a page, but the last line stayed with me. You were never invisible to me. I just didn't know how to say what you meant. 3 days after the exhibit, I received a call from Garrett. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter, the evening light slanting low through the blinds. The caller ID said his name, but I let it ring once more before answering. Hi, I said. Hi, he said back. There was a pause. I've been thinking about the other night. I waited. I know it was a lot, he said, but there's something I'd like to ask. I leaned against the counter, the cloth still in my hand. Go ahead, I said. I'm selling the house, he said. The one on Ridgeview, the old place. I said nothing. They're finalizing the papers this weekend, he went on. Before that, I wanted to invite you over. One last time. You lived more years there than I did. My throat was dry. I turned on the faucet, let the water run for a second, then shut it off. You don't have to, he added. I just thought, maybe we could walk through it together. I said I'd think about it. That night, I sat at the table with a mug of tea going cold. The envelope from the exhibit still sat on the sideboard. I read it again, Then I texted him back. Saturday morning, 10:30. The house on Ridgeview hadn't changed much from the outside. Same shutters, same porch swing. The hedges had been trimmed back, and someone had planted marigolds along the walkway. Garrett opened the door before I rang the bell. He stepped aside. I walked in. The air was different. No scent of lemon polish or wood smoke. The carpet was gone. The living room looked smaller than I remembered. "I cleared most things out already," he said. "The furniture's been sold or donated. Only a few boxes left in the garage." We walked through the hallway, past the coat closet, past the room that had once been Fallon's nursery. The sunlight coming through the back window caught the dust in the air. "Kitchen still smells the same," I said quietly. He smiled. We stood in the dining room for a while. The spot where the old hutch had sat was bare now. Just faint indentations in the carpet and a small scratch in the floor where the leg had dragged. "I remember Thanksgiving," he said. "You made that stuffing with cranberries. I always liked it that way," I said. He turned to me. "I was cruel," he said. "Back then, when everything with Jack happened." I didn't answer. "You were hurting," he continued, and I stepped back. I told myself it wasn't my place. "It was," I said. "You were family." He closed his eyes for a second. "I didn't know how to stand beside you and not take sides," he said. So I chose silence. We stood there a long while. Then I walked toward the garage door and opened it. There were 6 boxes stacked against the far wall, all labeled in black marker. Books, holiday, photos, linens, 2 unmarked. I knelt beside the box marked photos. Inside, envelopes of old prints, some loose. A few albums. One of them was from the early 90s, Fallon's first Christmas Emily's school portrait, Garrett and Jack standing shoulder to shoulder with coffee mugs in their hands. I held it up. "You keeping this?" I asked. He looked over. "I was going to offer it to you." I slid the album into my tote bag. After a moment, he said, "Emily stopped by last week. Said Fallon's been asking questions. What about you? About the early years. She wants to know why she doesn't remember more." I nodded slowly. "She was young. She remembers the smell of your pancakes," he said. "And the yellow scarf you used to wear when it snowed." I smiled faintly. "She asked if we were ever close," he said. "You and me." I looked over at him. "What did you say I told her once?" he said. "But I broke that closeness, and I'm still hoping to earn it back." I closed the box of photos and stood. "Is that all of them?" I asked. "One more," he said, lifting the unmarked box on the end. "This one's yours." He handed it to me. Inside were my old recipe cards, a sewing kit, a few cookbooks, and 2 hand-painted mugs. One of them still had my initials on the bottom in fading black Sharpie. "I thought these were gone," I said. "I couldn't throw them out," he said, "even when I was angry. I kept them in the back of the pantry." I slid the lid back on. When we walked out to the porch, the sky had shifted. Clouds were rolling in soft and low. He paused before stepping down. "Can I come to the next exhibit?" he asked. "You already did," I said. "I mean, the next one." I looked at him. "Yes." We stood in the silence a moment longer. We met again in early spring, 3 months after the walkthrough at Ridgeview. The gallery downtown had reopened after a long renovation, and the curator invited me to speak at the opening. They gave me a small corner near the back, just 2 panels and a single sculpture on a pedestal near the window. It was quiet there, gentle, the kind of space where people leaned in instead of hurrying past. Emily came just before sunset. Fallon stood beside her taller now, hair tucked behind her ears, the way her mother used to do. Garrett walked behind them, his hand resting on the back of Fallon's shoulder, like he wasn't quite sure he had the right to be there, but was willing to try. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. They found their way to me. Fallon stepped forward first. She looked down at the sculpture, a small bronze of a cupped hand holding a feather, and then back at me. "You made this?" she asked. I nodded. "It feels quiet." "It was meant to," I said. She didn't say anything else, just stayed there a minute, then moved to the photo display on the wall. Emily stayed close. She didn't fill the silence with apologies or explanations. Instead, she asked about the process, how I decided what to keep from the old photos, how I worked from memory when the originals had faded. I told her it wasn't about getting it perfect. It was about remembering without letting the remembering hurt too much. Garrett lingered at the edge, hands in his pockets. When the crowd thinned out and the last pair of visitors moved toward the catering table, he stepped beside me. "I brought something," he said. He handed me a small, padded envelope, no return address. Inside was a photo, one I hadn't seen in decades. The three of us on the back porch, early fall, a basket of apples between us. I was mid-laugh. Jack had his eyes closed against the sun. Garrett looked straight at the camera. "It was in a drawer," he said. "I almost threw it away." "But you didn't," I said. "No." I slipped the photo back into the envelope and placed it in my bag. Fallon returned to our side, her brow furrowed. "Will you show me how to make one? A sculpture?" "Not here," I said. "But yes, I will." We stood together for a little while longer, not saying much, just letting the hum of the room carry around us. No one rushed to leave. No one looked at a watch or checked a phone. It was the first time in years I felt like we were all in the same place at the same time, and not just by accident. When they left, Emily gave me a hug, not stiff or guarded like before, but real solid. Fallon smiled as she waved goodbye. Garrett paused at the door, his hand on the frame, and said quietly, "You still have time to change your mind about the house." "I already did," I said. I let it go. He nodded, then followed them into the dusk. That night, I lit a candle and sat by the window with a notebook I hadn't touched in years. I didn't write anything at first. I just watched the flame flicker and thought about how long it had taken to reach this place, not the gallery, but this quiet inside me. Some endings don't come with closure. Some don't come with justice or apologies or perfectly stitched up conversations. But if you're lucky, and if you wait long enough, what you do get is space. Room to breathe, room to forgive, room to start again, not because they earned it, but because you did. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever reclaimed something that was once taken from you, your peace, your voice, your place at the table, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, feel free to share it or follow along for the next one.